Hi there. I don't know about you, but every time I have a list of action steps for a project, even when I map it out in a calendar, it's so easy to keep pushing it off, rescheduling it, prioritizing something other than what's on my list. To do the work of your strategic plan, you need a different way to organize your action steps so that you have the best chance of realizing your vision for the future. Before we talk about how to do this, let's acknowledge that you have now spent a lot of time going through the process of strategic planning. By now, you have a clear sense of where you're headed and what you need to do to get there. This is often where people stop with their strategic planning process, to their detriment. This can happen because we start to run out of steam in the process, or because we're so excited about the work that we've done, we start to transition into go mode before we've even finished the process. Resist the urge to get ahead of yourself, and if need be, find a way to drum up a little more energy to finish the process of mapping out when you'll take action steps toward your goals. Let's recap a couple of quick points. There is a difference between building your plan and executing your plan. We're still in the building phase. You're in phase 3 of strategic planning, which is the planning phase. This course ends at the transition from phase 3 to phase 4, which is execution. While you'll get our direction and resources for executing your plan, the actual execution process continues from the time you roll out your final plan to your stakeholders and start working to the time you realize your vision in 3 to 5 years. In this video, you'll be learning about the #1 tool for executing your plan, creating a timeline. But not just any timeline. This timeline will be different than the old way of making a list of to-dos that's hard to track and easy to ignore. The timeline will be part of your final plan, but will be a living, breathing, changing, and adapting part of your plan. Why? Well, what do we know to be true for sure? Well, we know that there will be all sorts of things that come up that you cannot predict today, that will demand your attention and may demand that you adjust your approach to reaching your vision. We know for sure that we're going to have to adapt our plans over the course of the execution process. Knowing that, let's build a tool to help you adapt and still realize your vision. You might remember from previous lessons that we teach that going into a strategic planning process and coming out of a strategic planning process, you need to be clear about what never changes and what can change. Let's look at the strategic planning components and consider how this works. Your vision should not change over the course of your plan execution. Your high-level 5 or 3-year goal shouldn't change either. Your strategic focus areas should stay consistent and even guarded or protected from change. Though this actually, in your strategic focus areas, is where there's slightly more chance you might have to make adjustments as you adapt over the length of your plan execution. It's rare, but it can happen. Here in this section, your execution timeline, this is where you will absolutely have changes occur. Adjustments, tweaks as you go, guaranteed. So, given guaranteed change in this section, how do you make a timeline or a calendar of action steps, essentially, in a way that helps you adapt? Let's get into that. There are 2 core elements of your timeline, backcasting and forecasting. You will use backcasting for all of your strategic goals, and you'll use forecasting for all of your known commitments and obligations. To explain, I'm going to walk you through an analogy first. You have decided to attend a wedding that will happen in 2 weeks. The wedding represents your vision and associated strategic goals, focus areas, etc. Your vision is that by the end of Saturday, 2 weeks from now, you were on time and attended and enjoyed the festivities of a wedding. Knowing you want to be on time, dress sharply, with a gift in tow, you do some backcasting. You can think of this as backwards planning. The wedding starts at 4 p.m. Your high-level goal is to be seated and ready for the event to start by 3:45. That means you need to be parking by 3:30, which means you need to be driving by 2:30 because it's an hour away, which means you need to leave the house by 2:15 so you can stop and fill up the gas tank, which means you need to be dressed with a wedding gift in hand by 2:10, which means you need to start getting ready by 1:45, which means you need to have the present wrapped by 1:40, which means you need to have headed to the store by 10 a.m. to find the present and have plenty of time. That's backwards planning. That's backcasting. You start at the end goal, then determine what step is required to happen before that point, and then the step before that, and so on. Okay, so you've backcasted for the wedding, but you also have a life. The wedding is not the only thing you have to do. You're a busy person. You've got pre-existing known obligations that day. You need to overlay your forecast of known obligations and commitments to the timeline you backcasted to reach your strategic goal of attending the wedding. So some of the things on your forecast. Well, your kid is part of a soccer club and there's a tournament that same day. It's been on the calendar for months. You also have a commitment to your parents that morning that can't be moved. And you need to have a call with your friends about an upcoming trip that you're taking together. Plus all of the other normal life stuff. Feeding hungry kids, household chores, life. So based on known commitments and obligations, you create a forecast for your Saturday. Overlaying the backcast of your strategic goal and the forecast of your known obligations and commitments, you see where the pinch points are. There's no way you have time to gift shop on Saturday looking at this schedule. That has to be pulled forward and done before the weekend. Maybe you do the wrapping ahead of time too, so that's not one more thing. Then there's the soccer tournament there. Maybe you check to see if your friends can chat on Sunday instead so you don't have too many things piling up before you have to leave for the wedding. Maybe you send your significant other over to take care of the parents so you can do the soccer and then you can both attend the wedding together. The execution timeline is a multi-year calendar that consists of your strategic to-dos, all the action steps to reach your strategic focus area goals, which are backcasted, and your known realities, all the projects, activities, events, and known obligations that will use resources, time and money usually. That is forecasted. Let's look at how backcasting might work for your purposes. Begin by placing the years of your plan on the wall, ideally on flip chart paper that you can put sticky notes on. To backcast, you'll start with the end result. The end result for your planning work are all of your strategic focus area goals. Here's one example of one strategic focus area goal and how you might backcast for it. You place the strategic focus area goal in the year of your plan completion. In this example, the strategic focus area is staffing, and the goal is world-class levels of service are being provided in all aspects of the park. The next step is to simply ask, what has to happen in 2027 in order for this to be true in 2028. In this example, two things were identified. Operations need to be covered in sustainable ways, and the friend groups should be raising money for service needs. Then ask, what has to happen in 2026 in order for the steps in 2027 to happen and the goal to be realized in 2028? In this example, the steps have to do with recruitment. And then continue. What has to happen in 2025 in order for the steps in 2026 to happen and the goal to be realized in 2028, and so on. This is how you backcast. Here are 2 strategic focus areas that have been backcasted and then put together into one visual representation. Each strategic focus area is its own color. If you have 5 strategic focus areas, you'll have 5 colors. Once you've completed backcasting for all of your strategic focus areas, then you can complete forecasting. To forecast, you list known existing events, obligations, and work that will happen over the course of the plan. In this example, you can see a variety of things. There are different kids programs, different summer tours, distance learning programs, PMIS projects, and those sorts of things. Some things to consider when doing your forecast. Add things that take up resources, both human and financial. Think things that take up time and energy and money. Do you have other management plans that have already outlined work to be completed? Add the work that's part of those plans into your forecast. And do not get too far into the weeds here. Think of buckets of work that take up human or financial resources. This does not include your everyday work, not in your forecast. That's just standard. That's your baseline. That's happening anyway. So every day you answer emails, you engage with visitors, you complete client services, you attend social media, whatever it is that you do daily. We're not looking for the daily work to be put into your forecast, but rather projects, events, programs, etc. that will take a chunk of time, even if it's something you do every year. For example, some teams do annual budget planning and it takes or consumes energy for 2 weeks every year in September. You may want to add that as a standard chunk of resource allocation for every year. It's nice to separate work that happens annually from work that is unique to that year. The goal is to make note of the things that will absorb time and money. Once you've finished forecasting, you'll look at it with your backcasts and look for the pinch points. Where do you need to make adjustments? For example, if you're already planning to launch a new program in 2025, but the workload demands between the forecasted work and the backcasted work seem unreasonable, you can decide to move the program launch forward or delay it. Make sure to pick one color for each strategic focus area and stick with it. This will pay off when you need to transfer the work from the wall to a document. Using flip chart paper and sticky notes for the first couple of passes through both backcasting and forecasting will make the process easier, because you will certainly find that you have to move some of your action steps around so that you feel like the workload is sustainable. Eventually, you'll put all the steps into a spreadsheet. I'll give you another tip. The teams who found a way to keep their physical timeline on a wall for the duration of their plan execution have by far been the most successful at completing their plan as they sketched it out and realizing their vision fully. I know a team that left this work up in their conference room, and whenever they had plan execution meetings, they sat in front of their planning wall and discussed their work and even moved sticky notes around as needed to balance their workload. To set up your timelining process, you need to start by putting your years at the top of columns. Make sure that you account for full years of work. So, if your 5-year planning process is completed in mid-2023, you may opt to use full 5 years starting with January 2024. Then your full execution years are 2024, 2025, 26, 27, and 28, with the plan goals being complete by January of 2029. Color code your sticky notes, whether you are in person or virtual, so that you can keep track of your strategic focus areas. Keep your backcasting separate, but lined up by year with your forecasting. So for the year 2024, There would be one poster board or section below the year for backcasting, and then below that, but in the same column, there's a spot for forecasting. Also consider making a parking lot for anything that has to be done in the current year before your first full year of execution begins. Put your strategic focus area primary goal statements in the completion year. Now you've set up your timeline, whether it's virtual or physical, and you can begin filling it in. Here are the steps to create your execution timeline. After you've set it up, first you'll map out all the actions you need to take by year to accomplish your strategic focus area goals, and thus your organization-wide goal. This is your backcasting. Second, map out the known resource-consuming activities that will take place over the course of your plan execution. This is your forecasting. Don't forget to look at work from other existing plans when doing forecasting. So dig into those and see what workloads you need to add to your wall. Finally, make critical decisions about when things will happen by comparing the forecasting and the backcasting. Here's a question for you. Why do you think we have you do backcasting first? What's the advantage? Run your ideas past your instructor. Creating a timeline and using your execution tool are two different things. We'll get into more details about creating this tool in class, and in future lessons, we'll talk more about how you use the tool throughout the execution of your plan. Until then, happy planning.